At the supermarket, Stepan accidentally ran into his ex-wife Alla. Seeing her ex-husband, she widened her eyes in shock and froze. Standing before her was a respectable man, her former husband Stepan, with whom she had lived for 22 years before they divorced. The divorce was initiated by Alla. She filed for divorce. They divided the apartment, which Stepan had inherited from his grandfather, who had previously worked in the ministry. His grandfather had died in a car accident with his wife while returning from the village. It was dark, raining heavily, and he lost control of the car, being not so young anymore. "Oh, how I drained the life out of my ex," she used to boast to friends and relatives. They finally exchanged the 3-room apartment. He got a 1-room place almost on the outskirts of the city, while she lived in the center. "Yes, indeed, I did not leave myself wanting in the divorce," she loved to brag. When she left her husband, she maliciously and confidently predicted his future. "Goodbye, Stepan, you'll be lost without me. You'll become an alcoholic, make homeless friends, or even worse. Nothing good awaits you. You lived well because of me, but now you're finished. Haha, they'll remember me with ill will." About 4 years or a bit more had passed since their separation. They had not seen each other or known anything about each other. Alla looked at her ex, carefully examining him from head to toe as if to make sure it was really Stepan in front of her. She shook her head and said, "Hi. Is that really you, Stepan? You look great, dressed stylishly and tastefully, even look 10 years younger. What happened to you? I thought you would." "Well, I didn't expect this." Stepan and Alla had married, lived normally without arguments, everything smooth and steady. But over time, life began to seem like an endless routine. This was because they lived only for themselves. Alla did not want children, and if Stepan brought up the topic, she would say, "Oh, Stepan, we're still young, we need to live for ourselves. Kids are just trouble. We need to earn more money, and a child would be a hindrance." Stepan agreed with his wife, because he loved her. They tried to buy new and fashionable furniture for the apartment, and some unbelievably expensive vases. It was never enough for his wife. Stepan worked, and so did Alla. They furnished the 3-room apartment, bought beautiful dishes, and dressed well. Alla believed that it was her merit, that she was guiding her husband on the right path, and without her, he wouldn't be able to live like that. Time passed, and they never had children. Then came the time when they decided to go into business. Stepan opened a small auto parts store, starting small and gradually expanding. He added an extra room to the store and opened a cafe there. Over time, the cafe became popular and brought in a decent income. Alla had already quit her job, there was enough money, and she barely helped her husband. She considered herself the idea generator and directed her husband. Although it was Stepan who decided to open the store, it was actually suggested by a classmate whom Stepan had met by chance. He had come to visit his parents, and during their meeting, he mentioned that he owned an auto parts store. "Things are going well," he said. He explained to Stepan what needed to be done and where to start. Stepan was excited by the idea. His cafe had many visitors, including local bikers and other enthusiasts who had taken a liking to the place. Over time, various events, competitions, and auto and motorcycle rallies were held there. Weddings and parties were also hosted. In short, the profit was substantial. Stepan was passionate about his work, but he gradually noticed that he had no desire to go home. His interest in his wife faded, as she greeted him every evening with the same phrase, "Did you bring money? How much? Give it to me." Nothing else made her happy, she didn't want anything else. They already had bank accounts, diamonds, real estate, and a car. They frequently traveled abroad for vacations. Stepan was irritated by her hoarding and greed. Sometimes he would snap, "Alla, It's never enough for you. What are you going to do with all this? We didn't have children, you can't take it with you. He didn't want to go home. The house felt empty and cold. However, he never considered divorcing his wife and leaving. They had spent many years together, and it seemed too late to change anything. But then a crisis occurred, or rather not a crisis, but competition. A new cafe opened nearby with lower prices. They openly competed with Stepan, and over time many of his customers moved there. Profits fell, and so did Stepan's spirits. He became depressed. Alla started nagging. You're a failure, you don't bring enough money. I had plans to go abroad this summer. It made Stepan sick to hear it. Instead of supporting her husband in a difficult moment, she kept nagging and wearing him down. He began to snap back at her. The arguments escalated, and his wife threw tantrums. One day, when Stepan came home, Alla announced, I filed for divorce today. So, move out of the apartment, you can live at the dacha. I don't need a loser. This time, Stepan stood his ground and replied, the apartment is mine. I inherited it. The dacha is far from the city. It's inconvenient for me to commute back and forth. It takes a lot of time. Eventually, they exchanged the apartment. Stepan moved into a one-room apartment, dividing everything through the court. However, his wife managed to stash away a substantial amount of money. Stepan didn't argue over the money. I have my hands and feet, I can earn more, he thought. But his wife had worn him down. It turned out that after 22 years of marriage, her husband was still useless without her. The divorce had a significant impact on Stepan. There was no support from anyone, no children. He was alone. Not penniless, but alone. Stepan lost weight. He managed his store half-heartedly. There was no mood or motivation. He couldn't unpack his belongings in his new apartment for a long time. The boxes stood there for about 6 months. One warm summer evening, Stepan came home from work and was watching TV. Hearing a knock on the door, he opened it. Standing there was the neighbor from downstairs. He didn't know her name yet. He hadn't met all the neighbors. He knew this pleasant-looking woman by sight. They just exchanged greetings. The neighbor was worried. Oh, I'm sorry to bother you. The tap in my kitchen broke, water is gushing everywhere. What should I do? Do you know how to fix it? Could you take a look while the emergency service gets here? It took forever to reach them, and the water is still flowing. I thought of you since you live closer. Stepan rushed out of his apartment and into her kitchen. Water was already on the floor, splashing everywhere, making it slippery. He managed to turn off the water and they started mopping up together. They had almost finished when the emergency crew arrived. The plumber replaced the tap, fixed the leak, and left. Stepan offered his help, first asking her name. My name is Stepan. And yours? I know you're Stepan, she replied, my name is Irina. He helped her move the furniture while she cleaned the floor. In short, they tidied up. Irina thanked him and tried to give him money. Oh, I'm so grateful to you, Stepan. Please take it, I can't owe you. Irina, no, what money? I won't take it, put it away. Neighbors should help each other. Then I'll treat you to tea and pies. I just baked some apple pies today. I won't refuse tea and pies. Thank you, Stepan happily agreed. He had long caught the scent of freshly baked pies and, in general, found himself liking Irina more and more. She was a charming and slender fair-haired woman with blue eyes, around 40 years old. Besides, he hadn't eaten delicious homemade food in a long time and happily devoured the pies. Very tasty pies, how lucky I am to have dropped by, he joked. I can't stop, what if I eat them all? Yes, please, help yourself, I'll bake more, Irina smiled, pleased that she didn't owe him any more. While they drank tea, Stepan told his story of how he ended up here, and Irina opened up too. Her husband died in a car accident 8 years ago. She has a daughter studying at a college in another city, where Irina's brother lives, and helps her daughter. She lives with them. I even think about selling the apartment and moving to my daughter when she finishes college. Here, I'm alone, only my parents and husband are in the cemetery. Irina had no close friends, only colleagues from work at the hospital, where she worked as a nurse. She told Stepan honestly how she once met a man. They decided to live together. They didn't last long, just 2 months. He would go to his ex-wife every other day. And I noticed he would take food from the fridge, cheese, sausage, or a jar of jam, and take it to her. So, I kicked him out. Since that day, Stepan and Irina started talking. She helped him unpack boxes, he finally assembled a new cabinet, and they arranged everything on the shelves. In short, the apartment looked inhabited, and it was clear that a woman's touch had been applied. Their eyes sparkled. Stepan couldn't spend a day without Irina anymore, and she fed him delicious treats and pies. Then came Irina's birthday. He bought flowers, wine, cake, and candies, and showed up at her door. The dinner turned out to be romantic, and at the end of it, Stepan proposed to her, and Irina couldn't refuse. Stepan had long realized that he wanted to spend the rest of his life with Irina. They both felt like kindred spirits, with many shared interests. With his friend, Stepan shared, "It's funny, I fell in love at nearly 50, like a little boy. My heart races wildly, I'm just flying on the wings of love. Irina breathed new life into me. I want to live." I got heavily involved in business. Things started looking up, even the cafe picked up with renewed vigor. That's what love does. I started my life anew, and my friend was happy for me. Finally, he saw a completely different person before him. One evening, Stepan proposed to his wife, "Irina, let's sell our apartments and buy a cottage outside the city, but not too big. We don't need a big one for just the two of us." "How can you say we don't need a big one? Soon, there will be 3 of us, Stepan." "3? Your daughter is coming over?" "All right, let her come, it will be more fun." "Stepan, we're going to have a baby," Irina said, blushing. "Irina, is that true? You're not joking?" "It's true, you'll soon be a young father." "That's it, quit your job and stay at home. We need to take care of ourselves." "I'll take care of everything. Let me at least get maternity leave, then I'll quit." Irina laughed happily. Stepan was overjoyed. After all, for the first time in 48 years, he would become a father. They sold their apartments and bought a house quickly and successfully. However, Irina's pregnancy was difficult because she was 41 years old. But the son was born healthy and resembled Stepan. They were happy. Irina's daughter warmly welcomed Stepan, rejoiced for her mother, and now had a little brother. Stepan treated Irina's daughter as his own. "Irina, I never thought I'd find complete happiness. Love, family, and my son after 50. Irina, you're my guardian angel. Now I understand, you should never give up on your life. There's always a way out of any situation. You just have to believe and hope." And then his ex-wife Alla stood before him, while his son ran up to him and Irina approached. Stepan beamed, his eyes glowing. "Here are my favorites, my wife Irina and our little son." Alla experienced stress. Not only did her ex look like a respectable man, but his wife was also beautiful, and they had a little son. And she lived alone, not getting along with anyone. She silently looked at his wife and son, turned around, and quickly walked away. Stepan felt sorry for her for a moment. But it quickly passed. And then everything was forgotten. Forgotten. Forgotten.